What's going on, family? What's going on, YouTube? What's going on, people from the Kingdom of England, Empire of Albion? It's Archbishop Belmont from the Noble House of Belmont. And, like always, it's a beautiful time to be alive. And I can't stress that enough, especially for those of you who are, just now getting an opportunity to hear what it is that we angels have come to bring back to the forefront with regarding the lost history that you know nothing about. And the reason is because you've been preoccupied um, doing things that's keeping you from being able to put these pieces together. And it's okay, we didn't come to uh, chastise anyone because of what's going down, but we are bringing this information which is going to judge you because now you have to comprehend what it is that you had just been told or taught. And without proper understanding of this history, um, especially those of you who are going to start putting yourself into the state of mind and seeing and knowing that this is you, you must make time to be able to learn who it is that you say you are. Now, if you don't want to be this, then that's cool. It is what it is. But once again, a day is going to come when you're going to have to make a choice. And when you make a choice, you better be comfortable knowing that you are 100% understanding of what it is that you're choosing. And that's the reason why history is a very important piece of the puzzle for you placing yourself back in a position in life or in the reality that you want to live. All right. So this, we always come and bring you the jewels, and the jewels gonna come in your history. History is a beautiful thing. You got to take the good and the bad because without those modalities together, you wouldn't have the opportunity to live. And I'm not saying that everybody's living in, a good life because everyone's not living a bad life based off of their perception and how things are going. Anywho, let's go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to present, just pay attention to what you see on the screen. And this is called the East India Company. Now, why did I decide to talk about the East India Company? Well, because the East India Company was created before the so-called United States. They were created before the so-called colonies. And yet, they're called the East India Company, which was supposed to be a so-called English company. Now, before we go and get um, off track of what it is, I want to let you know that there's a difference between the English and there's a difference between the British. The English and the British aren't the same. The British are those who are descendants of the Roman Catholics, um, who know who they are. We can say like the Elizabeth the First, the Tudors. Um, they were in Stuarts. They were Roman Catholics. And why is that important to know? Is because people are going to say, well, aren't the English Roman Catholics? And the answer to that is, it depends on what time frame that you're really going to um, you trying to reference us to, because Roman Catholicism was not something that was actually practiced within the kingdom, but we did have people who were descendants of the Roman Catholic who were portraying to be English. You got to understand the history going all the way back to William the Conqueror in 1066. William the Conqueror worked for Rome and he brought feudalism into the kingdom. Other than that, everything was actually underneath the king, the monarchy, which was allodial, and still was allodial. But under feudalism, things, start getting rocky. But we're not going to talk about that right here now. That's not what the video's about. But let's go ahead and get started. So therefore, due to the sake of time, you can put the pieces together and see where you're gonna place yourself moving forward. All right, the the East India Company was an English slash British. Let's go ahead and say it was a British. The East India Company was a British joint stock company founded in 1600 and so-called dissolved in 1874. It was formed to trade in the Indian Ocean region, initially with the East Indies, the Indian subcontinent, Southeast Asia, and later with East Asia. All right, so that's over there, on the other side of the hemisphere. For those of you who are in so-called quote-unquote America, the company seized control of large parts of the Indian subcontinent, colonized parts of Southeast Asia and Hong Kong. At its peak, the company was the largest corporation in the world. You hear this? It was the largest corporation in the world at this time. Now, why I stopped to reference that is you're going to see how they're still so-called the largest corporation in the world. All right. The EIC had its own armed forces in the form of the company's three presidency armies, totaling about 260,000 soldiers, twice the size of the British Army at the time. The operations of the company had a profound effect on the global balance of trade, almost single-handedly reversing the trend of eastward drain of Western bullion seen since Roman times. And once again, I just told you that they were the descendants of Roman Catholics. All right, so it's only going to make sense that they'll still continue their operation. Um, all right. Originally chartered as the Governor and Company of Merchants, London, trading into the East Indies, the company rose to account for half of the world's trade during the mid 1700s and early 1800s, particularly commodities including cotton, silk, indigo, dye, sugar, salt, spices, saltpeter, tea, and opium. Don't forget people. Because yes, they were human trafficking too. The company also ruled the beginnings of the British Empire in India. All right, that's going to be key, knowing that moving forward. But we may not talk about that in this video. The company eventually came to rule large areas of India, exercising military power and assuming administrative functions. Company rule in India effectively began in 1757 after the Battle of Plassey and lasted until 1858, when following the Indian Rebellion of 1857. The Government of India Act 1858 led to the British Crown assuming direct control of India in the form of the new British Raj. Despite frequent government intervention, the company had recurring problems with its finances. The company was dissolved in 1874 as a result of the East India Stock Dividend Redemption Act, enacted 1 year earlier, as the Government of India Act had by then rendered its vestigial, powerless, and obsolete. Powerless and obsolete. The official government machinery of the British Raj has assumed its governmental functions and absorbed its armies. Alright, blah blah blah. Okay, so the origins. This is important. In 1577, Francis Drake, he worked for Elizabeth I, set out on an expedition from England to plunder Spanish settlements in South America in search of gold and silver. In the Golden Hind, he achieved this, but also sailed across the Pacific Ocean. In 1579, known then only to the Spanish and Portuguese. Drake eventually sailed into the East Indies and came across the Moluccas, also known as the Spice Islands, and met Sultan Babula, or Babala. In exchange of linen, gold, and silver, a large haul of exotic spices, including cloves and nutmeg, were obtained. The English, initially not realizing their huge value, Drake returned to England in 1580 and became a hero. His circumnavigation raised an enormous amount of money for England's coffers, and investors received a return of some 5,000%, thus starting an important element in the Eastern design during the late 16th century. All right, so you see that the origin of it is going during the reign of Elizabeth I, and this is when she pretty much gave Francis Drake a charter, in this case, for him to go and do what he was chartered to do, which is go and look for gold and silver in the territories that so-called Spain or Spanish and the Portuguese were plundering. And in this case, they considered South America. And after that, he ended up finding or landed on the west coast of the United States, and the rest is history. We'll talk about that later. All right, so let's go ahead and go back up, because I wanted to show you on the right hand side. All right, so you see, look at the flag. It's very interesting, huh? All right, so it's the company flag, and that's the key. It says the company flag. And now you see where it shows the English coat of arms with the lions or the Berber lions, and have our family crest on there. But once again, this were the British, and it's going all the way back to those who are descendants of the Roman Catholics. So even though you may see them utilizing our symbols, that does not mean that it was actually us, the true de jure angels or English, doing this. This was those who were sitting in our positions of power at this time, doing what's going on. All right. Now, for those in the United States, let's go and look up. Excuse me. Some showing you that's East India Company again flag. Go to flag of the United States, and it says the national flag of the United States of America, often referred to as the American flag or the U.S. flag, consists of 13 equal horizontal stripes of red top and bottom, alternating with white and blue rectangle in the canton. You see, this the canton is the left hand corner box, bearing 50 small white five-pointed stars arranged in blah 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 blah. The 50 stars on the flag represent the 50 U.S. states, and the 13 stripes represent the 13 British colonies. You see that? The 13 British colonies. So those stripes you see on the flag are the British colonies. All right, that declared independence from Great Britain. That's they said they did, and became the first states in the United States. All right. Now let's go down to history. The current design, the U.S. flag. We just spoke about this. Go to the first flag. The first flag is called, and you're showing you a similarity of the two flags: the Grand Union flag and the East India Company flag. They both have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven red stripes on the Grand Union flag, and one, two, three, four, five, six, seven flags on the East India Company flag. Now, why is this important to know? Well, because they're both the same flag. The Grand Union flag, as well as the British East India Company, are the same flags. One flag, one company. You get it? Like one band, one sound. All right. But one flag, one company. This flag, British East India, 1701 to 1801. Grand Union flag. All right, and it says the first flag resembling the modern stars and stripes was an unofficial flag, sometimes called the Grand Union flag or the Continental flag. Let's go ahead and hit Grand Union flag. The Grand Union flag, also known as the Continental colors, the Congress flag, the Cambridge flag, and the First Navy ensign, is considered to be the first national flag of the United States of America. All right, so the first flag of the United States of America is the same flag that the East India Company that was started in 1600 by Elizabeth I. Same exact flag that both of these both excuse me, because I'm saying both of these companies, but they're one. All right, same exact flag. So pay attention. Similar to the current U.S. flag, the Grand Union flag has 13 alternating red and white stripes representative of the 13 colonies. The upper inner corner or canton features the Union Jack, or flag of the Kingdom of Great Britain, of which the colonies were subjects. All right. Now, this is key. Very, very, very important to understand. All right, because when you look back in time in history, we know in so-called 1776, July 4th, 1776, when the Declaration of Independence took place. Okay, where the colonists declared their independence from Great Britain. But as we see here, this flag that was adopted December 3rd, 1775, it was not so-called relinquished until June 14th, 1777, which means that this flag was still flying over here in 1776 when the so-called Declaration of Independence took place, which meant that it was still, even after that declaration, still underneath, you see, Great Britain or the British or whatever you want to call them. All right, let's continue. It said by the end of the 1775, during the first year of the American Revolution War, the Second Continental Congress operated as de facto war government, who authorized the creation of the Continental Army, the Continental Navy, and even a small contingent of Continental Marines. A new flag was needed to represent both the Congress and the United Colonies, with a banner distinct from the British ensign, flown from civilian and merchant vessels, the white ensign of the British Royal Navy and the flag of Great Britain, carried on land by the British Army. The emerging states had been using their own independent flags, with Massachusetts using the Taunton flag. That's Massachusetts Taunton flag. See? And I'm not mistaken, they still have that. In New York, using the the George Rex flag. And remember, Rex means king, and that's how it looks. Prior to the adoption of the United Colors, Americans first hoisted the Grand Union flag on the colonial warship Alfred. Alfred was the merchant vessel Black Prince, named for Edward the Black Prince, and launched in 1774. How, pay attention to what you're being taught here, because this is history that seems to get overlooked. All right. In the harbor of the Western Shore Delaware River at Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on December 3rd, 1775, under the command of the new appointed Lieutenant John Paul Jones of the formative Continental Navy. The event was documented in letters to Congress and eyewitness accounts. The flag was also used by the Continental Army forces as both a naval ensign and a garrison flag throughout 1776 and early 1777. It was widely believed that the flag was raised by George Washington's army on January 2nd, 1776, at Prospect Hill in Charleston, now part of Somerville, near his headquarters in Cambridge, Massachusetts, across the Charles River to the north of Boston, which was then surrounding and laying siege to the British forces then occupying the city. It also stated that the flag was interpreted by British military observers in the city under commanding General Thomas Gage as a sign of surrender. However, some scholars dispute the traditional account and conclude that the flag raised at Prospect Hill is probably the flag of Great Britain, though subsequent research supports the contrary. The flag has several names, at least five which have been properly remembered. The more recent moniker Grand Union flag was first applied in the 19th century Reconstruction era. There you go, and the Reconstruction era is the time after the separation took place, where they kind of start redoing everything, tearing down some buildings. Not all buildings got torn down, because you see a lot of these great buildings that we have in our so-called cities, including the government buildings, are all ancient buildings, and they were not built during the 1800s or the 1700s or probably even the 1600s. These buildings go back time beyond that, because if you understand the history of Edward the Confessor, we ain't gonna talk about that right now, but Edward the Confessor, he was the one that had came up with a lot of these grand designs and wanted them to be done, which they call a Gothic architect, but many people now consider him as a Moorish or Romanesque or Norman Romanesque or Tartarian or all these different cultures, but it was actually a one empire at the time and one type of people or whoever created them. But this is not what this video is about. All right, so let's continue. All right, so it said the Grand Union flag became obsolete following the passing of the Flag Act of 1777 by the Continental Congress. The new national flag replaced the Union Jack in the canton with 13 stars representing the 13 states on a field of blue. The resolution describes only a new constellation. You hear that? It says the resolution describes only a new constellation. The arrangement of the white stars in the blue canton overall designs were later interpreted and made with rows, columns, a square with one star in the center, a circle, various other designs. Alright, so just because they changed it, it doesn't mean that it was taken away its original effect or what it really originally meant. Alright, let's go to the Flag Act of 1770. Well, nah, I'm not going to go into that right now. Let's go down to the design analysis. It said it's not known for certain when or by whom the design and continental colors were created, but the flag could easily be produced by sewing blah blah blah. Don't worry about that. The design of the colors is strikingly similar to the flag of the British East India Company. No shit, they're the same. Indeed, certain EIC designs in use since 1707, when the canton was changed from the flag of England to that of the flag of Great Britain, were nearly identical. They were identical. However, the number of stripes vary from 9 to 15. One theory in the origin of the design is that the American colonists would have known and been familiar with the existing EIC flags and that this may have influenced the design. Well, that's because they're one and the same. The combined crosses in the flag of Great Britain symbolize the union of the Kingdom of England and the Kingdom of Scotland. The symbolism of union of equal parts was retained in the new U.S. flag, as described in the flag resolution of June 14, 1777. There you go. All right. So it says, according to the Wexologist Nick Groom, the use of the flag of Great Britain in the Canton component of the flag suggests that George Washington's army adopted it. You hear that? George Washington's army adopted it, not as a protest against the rule of the British Parliament, but instead as a profession of continued loyalty towards King George III. There you go. How can we tell? How can we tell that George Washington still had loyalty to King George III? Let's check this out. All right, George Washington. George Washington was an American military officer, statesman, founding father who served as Continental President of the United States from 1789 to 1797, appointed by the Continental Congress as commander of the Continental Army. Washington led the Patriot forces to victory in the American Revolutionary War and served as the president of the Constitutional Convention of 1787, which created the Constitution of the United States, blah, 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 blah. All right. What we want to get to is the nitty gritty. All right, so now like the nitty gritty that's going to be good is you want to see what did he create. All right, let's see. Let's get to it. We want to really technically get to Washington D.C. That's the key. Why? All right, let's see. Where we need to get to. Okay, Washington D.C. And bear with me, my internet is not as fast as it should be. Okay, Washington D.C. All right, let's go ahead and get to this. This is good. Washington, D.C., formerly the District of Columbia, also known as Washington or D.C., is the capital city and federal district of the United States. It is located on the east bank of the Potomac River, which forms its southwestern and southern border with the U.S. state of Virginia, and it shares a land border with the U.S. state of Maryland on its other sides. The city was named for George Washington, a founding father and first president of the United States, and the federal district is named after Columbia, the female personification of the nation, as the seat of the U.S. federal government. So it's the seat of the federal government and several international organizations. So several international can be different embassies from different nations. We can say that. All right. As the seat of the U.S. federal government and several said that the city is an important world political capital. Exactly. It is one of the most visited cities in the U.S. with over 20 million annual visitors. 2016. The U.S. Constitution provides for a federal district under exclusive jurisdiction of Congress. Now, we already showed you the Congress flag. All right. The district is not part of any U.S. state. You hear that? It's not part of any U.S. state, nor is it one itself. The signing of the Residence Act on July 16, 1790 approved the creation of the Capital District located along the Potomac River near the country's east coast. The city of Washington was founded in 1791 and Congress held its first session there in 1800. In 1801, the territory, formerly part of Maryland and Virginia, officially became recognized as the federal district. Alright, in 1846, Congress returned the land originally ceded by Virginia, including the city of Alexandria. In 1871, it created a single municipal government. You hear that? So in 1871, it became a single municipal government for the remaining portion of the district. There's been many efforts to make the city into a state, blah, 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 blah. Read the rest of that on your own. So, let's get to the good part. Look to the right. The flag of the city of Washington, D.C. The flag of Washington, D.C. is 3 stars, 2 red stripes. Now, why this is important is because we need to know where this flag came from. Alright? We did read that George Washington, he still had his allegiance to Great Britain. Okay, well, must mean his flag came there or somewhere. Let's check. I think it's on here. Actually, it should be. Always look on the left hand side in the table of contents. Hmm. Okay, here we go. That's why I love the find or the search bar. All right, so it says the flag of Washington D.C. was adopted in 1938 and is a variation on George Washington's family coat of arms. All right, let's see his family coat of arms. This personal coat of arms are presidents of the United States. So it says many United States presidents have borne a coat of arms largely through inheritance, assumption, or grants from foreign heraldic authorities. 1. Dwight Eisenhower received his upon becoming a Knight of the Order of the Elephant of Denmark. The President of the United States, as a position, uses the seal of the President of the United States coat of arms, but this is a coat of arms of office, not a personal coat of arms. All right, here you go. George Washington, the first president. His coat of arms. It's argent, 2 bars, and then the chief 3 mullet gules. All right. You have the second president, John Adams. His family coat of arms. You have the third president, Thomas Jefferson. His family coat of arms. And you see, they're still utilizing their family coat of. Now, why would you still use your family coat of arms if you actually broke away from Great Britain? Because you didn't. You never broke away. Remember, we actually really wanted a reconciliation because we just read that. Let's go to another part of the Grand Union flag. It says after the American Revolution began, the first unofficial flag, known as the Continental Colors, uh, or sometimes as the Grand Union flag, the Cambridge flag, the Somerville flag, or the Union flag, was hoisted on the towering 76-foot Liberty pole at and you see the Liberty pole at Prospect Hill in Charleston, now in Somerville, Massachusetts, on January 1st, 1776. It was raised at the behest of General George Washington, whose headquarters were nearby. You hear that? The flag had 13 horizontal stripes, probably the red and white, blue, blah, blah, blah. And you already see it. So, back to back to the Grand Union flag down. What did it say? It said, according to Wexologist Nick Groom, the use of the flag of Great Britain in the can component of the flag suggests that George Washington's army adopted it, not as a protest against the rule of the British Parliament, but instead as a profession of continued loyalty towards George III. This view was shared by Laurie Cockhoven, a biographer of George Washington, who suggested the flag was designed to reflect the colonists' hope for justice from King George III. So there you have it. The East India Company, which is technically the United States, still wanted their allegiance to King George III. They didn't want a separation. Get back to East India Company. It's East India Company flag. You see the two flags together again, so therefore you don't say like we're making this up. Was it on this? Not that. George Washington's coat of arms. Once again, it goes back to England. All right, where did I think it's in the grand. Yeah, gotta be on here. All right, here we go. Why did it bring? Oh, my bad. I'm not saying why did it do this. It's internet. Come on, what's going on? All right, well, we can go worry about it, but you already seen it. Oh, there you go. All right. So like I said, so the first flags we see the Grand Union flag and the flag of the British East India Company, which is a representation of telling you one flag underneath one company. They're one and the same. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and end it on there. So once again, brothers and sisters, this is a great time to be alive, to understand and see the position that we are in. It's going to be hard for you to pull yourself out of the fictitious reality you have led yourself to be succumbed to, um, just because you didn't know any better. And it's not always, I'm not going to always say it's your fault, but you got to take some type of accountability, um, what it is that you have let yourself to be stuck into. So with that being said, we love you. Check us out, like, share, subscribe, um, and definitely please donate. You can donate at Cash App English Church. Like I said, any donations right now is going to help us tremendously, so that way we can continue to keep doing this great work. And please, those of you who are ready to come or understand your history, visit the Third Temple English Church.com. As well, you can either email me at the Third Temple Church .com, or excuse me, Third Temple Church at gmail.com. So therefore, you can start communicating with those inside the church and be able to start bringing yourself back home. All right, peace and love.